Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this is a one-off dedicated Arborist call to discuss ZSAs and other potential candidates for an upcoming network upgrade, and to talk about NU6 and NU7. And the agenda, as suggested by Josh and mildly amended by me, is to start off with looking at the current state of what's in development and what the priorities are, and then discuss what's likely to be feasible and the scheduling for NU6 and NU7. I'm not sure the gauging community sentiment fits into an Arborist call, but we can talk about it briefly. And then I also want to talk a little bit about potential NU5 retro. So
did we not already do an NU5 retro? I thought we did.
We
one
did a
in
sand.
Arborist.
We did a sandblast retro, but not the actual network upgrade retro.
I might be confusing it with an internal one that we did. Okay,
I'll come back to that later.
Yeah.
The gauging community sentiment dodger is related to how we're looking at the dev fund as a candidate for NU6.
Uh-huh. I guess with ZSAs, shall we hand over to John and let John give us an update as to where we are? And one thing I want to highlight is that there's been some FUD circulating recently to the effect that about sort of Kedit's requirements for pushing forward with activating ZSAs.
I can address. I don't know if I would call it FUD, but I can address like any things that are not clear from what I'm saying. So I'll take over. If it's okay with everybody. Cool. So here's the deal. We've been working for a long time to have ZSAs out there, and yeah, we're hearing that people are frustrated that the ZSAs are not deployed, and there's a few messages that we want to convey. Main one is the roadmap for 2024. Like, what are we actually working on? What's the status? What do we expect to get by NU6? And basically lay out like how we see the development. The main point of confusion here, I think, is Kedit as an organization does not deploy any piece of software. If we wanted to deploy, we don't have a button to do it, and if we wanted not to deploy, we don't have a button to do that. What we do have is a commitment to the Zcash ecosystem and to all of the people here, a long-standing commitment that we're working with for quite some time now, to deploy the best quality of software, to develop the best quality of software that we can, provide pull requests that are mergeable, so that fit, if anything else progressed, that we can make the progress too, so that people can actually easily merge rather than, tear their hairs off. And to be aligned on what's the functionality that we're developing, so that people are actually happy with the result. So I want to present in it's 3 slides really, but I think it might help get.
I think we might want to be a bit more explicit what the rumor going around was, though, because the thing I had heard from multiple people, which I don't believe to be true, was ZSAs were not going to get deployed until there was some kind of hard-coded view key or something like that. And that was a blocker, and that was going to push things to NU7 or 8 or 9 or at some point in the future. And again, I want to emphasize, I don't believe this is true, but this was the thing that was going around that I've gotten from multiple people.
Okay, so I used to play volleyball. You just did this, and I'm gonna take
Yeah.
the. Thank you. Yeah. So we develop code. We get money, lots of money actually, over the years to develop code. So it's a huge responsibility to deliver the code. We deliver ZSA so that electric coin company, Zcash Foundation, and the ecosystem can deploy that. I personally believe that deploying ZSAs, I call it naked ZSAs, so just ZSAs as we develop them without any additional features of compliance, is going to be hell of a scary moment for all of us. But that's what we're paid to do. We're paid to develop ZSAs. So we're developing ZSAs and we're delivering that. There's a source of confusion in what I'm saying, because I strongly believe that we should add features that make us robust against compliance efforts against the ecosystem. But that's not, it's not a step, there's no condition. We're working towards naked ZSA, and this is what's probably...
Let's call them vanilla ZSAs. That's I've heard that term used already, and I think it's fine.
Yeah, I like that idea. So I guess just to be explicit for anybody who's watching this call who doesn't know how software development works, right? That this means Kata is going to deliver software that's going to be onto the maintainers of Zebra and possibly Zcash. These are the two clients to merge in and actually deploy in a new process. But that's completely separate from Kata. That's on the maintainers of Zebra and Zcash.
Now, but if we want to push the argument, if Kedit stopped working today and just dropped everything, then the code that we already delivered and we already gave, there's a whole grant that we had the functionality ready for a past version of Zcash. We demonstrated that. That's actually, you can pick it up and work with that, but it would be kind of a failure because we wouldn't be doing all that we committed to. So we're not doing that. We are doing what we committed to, which is to work on having Zcash ZSA ready as fast as possible. And actually our targets are NU6, and it's always been NU6 to have the functionality ready for that. We had to work harder to be ready for NU6 because of the back and forth on Zcash and Zebra, but nevertheless, that's our target. That's what we're trying to achieve. So I understand completely that the source of confusion, because I'm also very vocal on the fact that I think it's kind of scary to launch ZSAs with NU6. When I say scary, what I really mean is that the features that we developed are very, very good for privately issuing assets. But if you're a stablecoin issuer, for example, that wants to be compliant, it's difficult for you to use the tools as is to launch your stablecoin with compliance. So we're kind of directing what we're doing in directions that I think are not really the message. We want assets with privacy. We really want them, and Zcash is the best place to have this because the underlying structure is fully private. But I think it would be useful, and I've argued for it for a long time, useful to have additional features that signal that we also want to welcome compliant stablecoins to join the ecosystem. But that shouldn't be a source of confusion. This is in addition. It's not a roadblock. It's not instead. And we're actually doing efforts to push Zebra itself, regardless of ZSA, so that NU6 as a milestone can be achieved. So that's kind of like what you described, Ian. I'm pausing. There's two hands pausing.
Thank you. Consider that effectively spiked.
Darren and then Strad.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about some technical issues to do with timelines. my position, and I think ECC's position, and Josh will contradict me if I'm not correct, is that it isn't possible to safely deploy ZSAs in NU6 because there will be insufficient time for audits. And we need to, I think there's some underestimation among some people at how long it takes to deploy a network upgrade, because you need the audits, you need deployment on testnet, and then you need to wait for the EOS halt period, basically, before it can activate on mainnet. And so in order for
if I can answer on that, because I've heard from you that timeline. The timeline that we work under is a freeze around June, July, and to make that, in order to have something plausibly ready for November, in order to make that happen, the testnet work we already started, and the audit. This week we had a talk with the list authority, and they're already trying to beginning to scope how will be approach the audit. And there's another team from geometry that is making themselves available further down the year. I'm not contradicting the fact that more time to do it the right way is good. Not contradicting that. But this is taken into account in the timelines that we're working under currently, with July as a cutoff.
I mean, to me, it's only just going to be possible to do the audits for the very much more limited NU6 in time to activate in November, and so the much more complicated CSAs, I don't see it. Strad.
Okay, so with my zip editor hat on, I wanted to give similar to what Dara Emma was saying now, but from a different perspective. From my perspective, the rationale for defining a separate NU6 and NU7 is primarily about decoupling the zips that are being proposed, or the candidate changes in the consensus rules that are being proposed for landing. So I personally am very happy for ZSAs to be deployed, as soon as is practical. However, the risk of slippage and the risks of delays there, if we specifically say that ZSAs are going into the only next upgrade, means that other changes that might need to be deployed are also coupled to that and also subject to the same risk of slippage. Case in point, if the community coalesces around a dev fund change or a protocol upgrade to a zip to that effect, that has some specific timelines that need to be met for that to be able to get in, if the goal of those changes is to be continuity of development funding. And the separation between an NU6 and an NU7, really, the numbering is irrelevant here. It's more the fact that having two separately targeted network upgrades means that one of them can land at a time, the time that they can land becomes decoupled and potentially independent. The question there then becomes, if that NU6 is the one that lands first and has the smaller scoping, is there anything else that is worth doing at that point, either in preparation for ZSAs, or that is other things that again want to be landed without being coupled to the deployment timeline and risk of slippage of ZSAs?
we have a queue building up. I'm just going to briefly say that we faced a similar sort of situation around nervousness around timelines with NU5, and at the time, certainly the approach that I took, having just moved over to the foundation, was that rather than worrying about the timeline and whether we felt comfortable with the timeline, we should define what was required, what the prerequisites were in order for NU5 and specifically Orchard to go live, and that included things like audits. It included sufficient time on testnet for testing and whatnot. I want to just briefly show you what the path to ZSAs looks like, because it's not simply a matter of deploying it in Zebra. If we were to do that, there would end up being a fork in the Zcash network if we didn't also do something about Zcash D. And the level of complexity and the amount of different things that we're talking about is pretty sizable. And this is very much a draft, but you can see here that the preferred path is that we deploy ZSAs on Zebra, and this includes audits of both the ZSA circuit, Zebra, the changes that are made to Zebra itself, as well as probably audits in some of the ECC crates like Orchard and Libra Zcash, building a new CLI wallet, sunsetting Zcash D, and then being ready to actually go ahead and make
Yeah.
I can't hear you. You're dropping out, Dodger.
I'll just finish there. Just wanted to say that it's a pretty complex problem.
Yeah, I wanted to, so my hand was actually closely related to this. So one of the things that was not mentioned in terms of deployment requirements for ZSAs is support in a wallet so that it's possible to do integration testing. And if we look back to NU5, one of the things that was badly underestimated was the complexity of wallet support. And so in any of these paths, so even if we were talking about, say, a plan B, as you've got it listed here, extracting the CLI wallet, there would still need to be wallet support for ZSAs. Now, perhaps not in that wallet, but that is additional development complexity that we can't really deploy without. And that was a big part of where NU5 went astray.
I agree completely. I think it was a huge mistake not to have wallet support for Orchard ready for NU5. And as it happened, the sandblasting happened shortly after NU5 deployment, sort of not directly related to it, but it completely derailed our ability to implement that wallet support. So we cannot assume that we'll have time, that we can't just activate ZSAs and not have wallet support for an unknown period.
Yeah, you'll note here that the preferred path is for there to be a Rust CLI wallet available before we activate on mainnet.
Yeah. One minor note there, and this is just a terminology thing, but it's something that I wanted to bring up at some point. We shouldn't regard it as a CLI wallet. We should regard it as a wallet service that has a CLI interface to it, similar to what currently is exposed by Zcash D, because there are definitely users of the Zcash D wallet service that don't go through the CLI.
Yeah, I mean, calling that a wallet stall, the majority of the support needs to be implemented in Libra Zcash, and so that work is independent of whether it's a CLI or GUI wallet. Yeah, and that's the part that was not in place for NU5.
Good example of why retros are good.
Well, Yes, true, but I mean, ECC had a retro about NU5, and we acknowledged that that was a mistake. So let's not make the same mistake in this case.
Be interesting to have the results of that retro shared. I think Ian's next, then Dara, then John.
Yeah, it would be a shame if concerns about NU6, and I think we should be explicit here, what I believe people are alluding to is the dev fund. So if concerns about getting continued funding for the organizations involved cause us to delay shipping an actual feature of value to the Zcash community. Strad's point about maybe wanting to separate the two things is good, but there's a setup here where we get delayed on trying to figure out funding. And the only reason we don't want to do ZSAs in the same set is because there's some risk that it delays the dev fund. And that
wouldn't be the only
that
reason.
would be really just not good.
It's not the only reason. I mean, we've already discussed several reasons. One reason we haven't discussed is that. Go on.
Would you mind letting me finish?
Yes.
Yeah. So there are a set of legitimate reasons of like, it's not ready, it's not done. I think, in my opinion, having now been involved in a number of projects doing audits and testing, you can probably get that done in time. But if not, as Jack said, we should ship it when it's ready. So nobody is saying run off and do this when it's untested, and claims that it would somehow be unsafe are, I think, to be honest, crap. Because if it's not safe, none of you all are going to ship it. We know that, right? You can be trusted to do that. So we get back to this other risk, because the only thing I can see about sequencing here is this, oh, well, we don't want to take a dependency on NU6, because on the hypothetical that it slips, then we delay the dev fund. And again, features of value to the Zcash community, other side of it. It would be a shame if that's what delayed this.
Dara.
So my strong belief is that if we tried to do it for NU6, together with a funding change, then we would miss the November deadline and it would slip. And we would have to be, we would be forced to remove, ZSAs from NU6 and reduce it.
Can I suggest something? There's a difference between having the feature as ready as possible before a deadline and committing to that feature being in NU6. I don't know exactly how the mechanics of how you guys prepare to vote on features and get features in, etc., and merge them, etc. I'm not familiar with the process itself, so I'm probably missing a lot there. But if we aim for a fully functional ZSA deliverable that is fit to something very close to the tip of of whatever you guys made progress in Orchard and Libras this and Zebra there, all of those progresses. If we're very close there, and you make a decision to push it to NU7, you know that's an engineeringly valid decision. But I don't think that we as a third-party group that is developing should be retargeting our development for later. I think we should be targeting it for now. And if by chance the risk is deemed low, which I'm putting all my efforts and the team is putting all the efforts into, then we win that much of earlier deployment. There's a macro risk here, which is irrelevance of Zcash as an ecosystem. And that I mean, we can debate all together about like within our ecosystem, but the zoom out is the earlier we become relevant to the current upgoing wave of need of exactly what Zcash is bringing, then the more we have chances of like thriving as an ecosystem.
Yeah, indeed. And the point I was trying to make, and maybe didn't make quite clear enough in my earlier point, is that the NU6 versus NU7 numbering should really is like it's an artifact of what actually gets in when, and somewhat an artifact of the fact that naming things is hard, and we wanted to stop giving things non-numbered names. And obviously, the net upgrades that go on chain have to have an ordering, a canonical ordering that for consensus purposes, but the main thing that we want to focus on is the decoupling part of that rather than the ordering part of that. So indeed, getting ZSAs to a point where it is deployable on the shortest possible timeline is, to me, the important part of this. And then if it happens to be ready to be able to go in the same network upgrade as other things that are already ready, then great. The main limitation there, at least from past experience with doing network upgrades, is that if you have two deployed network upgrades that are too close together, depending on what changes they're making, like third parties in the ecosystem get a bit upset. The one I'm thinking about specifically was where we had two transaction versions, V3 and V4. And V3 was introduced the things that were necessary to do upgrades at all, and then V4 deployed sapling. And due to what turned out to be the counterfeiting bug, we needed to make V3 and before hard deprecated, but that meant that people had migrated to V3, which was a hard block, couldn't do V1 and V2, and then immediately had to migrate to V4 transactions. And that was a bit, that caused some consternation. So
is that true?
Yeah, it did. I received a lot of angry messages about that.
No, what I mean is sapling didn't.
We needed to prevent people from using the old Sprout circuit, which was supported in V3 transactions.
Sorry, can I ask a high-level question? Can you remind me, is NU6
yes, that's right.
Principally the dev fund, continued dev fund question, or are there other major technical changes going into it?
Well, that's partly what this meeting is meant to be about.
Yes,
we've currently only focused on ZSAs, but there are several other features that are being considered there. Actually, if you could, I can just pull them off the ECC roadmap because we've got them written there. So the current set of things, again, as a zip editor, the current set of things that I am aware of that people are considering for upcoming network upgrades are ZSAs, the sustainability funding stuff, of which there are 3 separate zips. So there's a couple of different ways those could be deployed. Explicit fees, which solves a long-standing problem with usability. And it's just, if we're making transaction change format, we should just do this. There was something else that I'm forgetting right now. And then the changes to how memos are done, which is partly for essentially the main thing that enables, I can get into the details if you want, but the main thing that enables is providing authenticated reply addresses inside memo fields, which currently for Orchard addresses can't fit in a single 512 byte memo. So we need the ability.
This is much smaller in scope for everything else than say Orchard.
Much smaller scope than Orchard, much more scope than ZSAs.
All of this together, even if we did all of it, which is absolutely not guaranteed, is much smaller than ZSAs.
And much smaller than sapling or Orchard. Just so people have a notion of how much.
Yes.
Because we can get into little technical weeds, but I want a big picture of how much stuff we're talking about versus how much stuff we've done in the past versus what's going on.
Yeah. And even like, as far as like the funding stream proposals that people have been making for dev funds and things, some of those proposals could be more complex than others. And at least in my comments on the forum, I've been trying to guide idea proposers towards approaches that are easier to implement to make them less technically blocked on, and like to reduce contention with other requirements on engineering, specifically ZSAs.
So there's something that hasn't been mentioned, which is another reason why ECC is reluctant to sort of support having ZSAs in the immediately next network upgrade is that we believe that we don't want to implement major new consensus features in Zcash-D because Zcash-D is a C++ code base that it takes a huge amount of engineering effort to update, and we prefer to focus on deprecating it rather than supporting new features in it. Now, for the features that are proposed for NU6 in the timeline in the roadmap that ECC posted, those are very simple to implement in Zcash-D. The same is not true for ZSAs. So it's not just doing the audits and doing the testnet deployment. It's also now I note that John said that Kedit had implemented ZSAs for Zebra, but that my understanding is that's a previous version of ZSAs, and there would still be a huge amount of work needed to bring that up to date with the current ZSA proposal.
I think you meant Zcash-D there, Emma?
Sorry, and yes, I didn't. Did I not say Zcash-D? I meant
You said Zebra.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, so I'm just a comment there. If we had been sticking to Zebra to Zcash-D, sorry, I'm going to be confused as well. If we had been sticking to Zcash-D all along and saying, listen, NU6 will maybe be the last version that we use this this old pile of C++, but we have to, then we would already probably be right now talking about lessons learned from the audits of ZSA, because we wouldn't have been re-implementing everything in Zebra. So at this stage,
we would eventually have had to re-implement everything in Zebra because
but we could have done
I think
that
we can
after...
save this circle of stuff. The conclusion is ZSAs is going into Zebra, which is the fancy Rust new thing that everyone's agreed to migrate to at some point. And the pile of legacy C++ code is being burned in effigy and never being touched again at some point in the future.
That was something that we understood and worked by, and it's a part of the conversation now. If we're doing never mind ZSA that would come with Zebra, if I understand correctly, there's a big conversation of are we taking a risk of doing of betting on Zebra for NU6, or is it established and a huge consensus among everybody that Zcash-D is what's going to come up with NU6?
No. Is it? My understanding is that NU6 will be implemented in both Zcash-D and Zebra.
Yeah, it's not the case that you would do NU6 only in Zcash-D, because Zebra exists. It's on the network. People are using it. Anything we deploy now has to go into both until we can get rid of Zcash-D. So it wouldn't be the case that ZSAs would have only gone into Zcash-D. They would have had to go into both Zcash-D and Zebra. So
I have a question there about deprecating Zcash-D, right? What you said earlier implies that you guys can't deprecate it by NU6. Right, but if you could deprecate it by NU6, this would resolve this other problem.
Well,
so what's up with that?
Depending on how much work it takes to deprecate it for NU6. The alternative universe in which we deploy ZSAs in NU6, there are lots of things that we have to do. We have to implement ZSAs, the consensus layer, not the wallet layer, in Zcash-D, and make sure that it's interoperable with Zebra. So that requires interoperability.
No, that's if you don't deprecate Zcash-D by NU6. If you do deprecate Zcash-D by NU6, then
all right,
for whichever upgrade,
that was a different world.
Yeah, for whichever upgrade we deprecate Zcash-D for, I see Dodger's got the high level on here, which at a glance looks basically correct. The limiting factor here is that there are very large ecosystem partners who depend on the wallet that is in Zcashd, because the way they have deployed things is to treat Zcashd like a Bitcoin node, and just they rely on the specific RPC, they rely on the Zcashd wallet, and they use it for like tens to hundreds of millions of USD.
This is exchanges and everything else. Makes perfect sense.
Exactly. And that is the getting that migrated is the critical path to the future with Zebra only consensus.
Yes.
Okay, so
it sounds like...
can I continue just for a minute? So what we have to do if that's the approach is it's not sufficient to do it to get those large users of Zcashd off onto Zebra or other software just in time for the upgrade, because that's way too risky. They have to have done it a significant length of time before the upgrade, which is what our roadmap allows for.
Can you define significant? Is this like months, 6 months, 6 years?
Obviously not 6 years. But,
so if this were in the hypothetical world where this was just where Zebra doesn't exist and this is a Zcashd upgrade, the relevant update would be, in this case, the 6.0.0 release of Zcashd, which is generally 3 to 4 months beforehand. And the reason for that window is both for deployment timelines for the large third parties, because they have to get those big upgrades into their pipeline, and for the deprecation side, ensuring that older nodes are no longer running by the time the network upgrade happens. But the relevant timeline on this would have been essentially that 3 to 4 month window for the time point is the time at which we released the consensus node version that is aware of the actual selected mainnet activation height.
Which means that you have to go back from that to the testnet activation height, which should be at least 1 or 2 months before that, and so if you sort of count from now to November, there's just not enough time.
And you have to, from testnet activation, you have to actually have time to fix bugs. I mean, in NU5 activation, I think that on local testnets, we had several iterations of launching on a local testnet and then wiping that local testnet and starting again.
Yeah. So basically, the large users of Zcashd would have to be able to move away from Zcashd. So by the time, if you look at the NU6 schedule on our proposal, can you just bring that proposal up? The roadmap that Josh posted.
I've just dropped a link in the chat.
Okay, can we see it on the screen? Yeah, thanks. Okay, so zoom in on that on the NU6 section. Okay, and scroll down. Okay, cool. So in order to do ZSAs in NU6, that means basically the timeline is the same, except that you have to replace the NU6 features with the with ZSAs, and that the implementation in Zcashd and LibreZcash, that you still have to have wallet support in LibreZcash. If you're deprecating Zcashd, then you don't need it in Zcashd. But it needs to be sort of whatever you implement for Zcash in place of Zcashd for those third-party users also has to be done by the end of. So if we scroll up. I think it's June, but I just want to check. Yep, June.
Yeah. The main thing there, if you look at the Zcashd deprecation box in the example roadmap we have here, it's really 5 months because we're already most of the way through April. You know, but we've already started on it, but it's like sort of 5 to 6 months total time we've currently got there for replacing Zcash D. And if we instead targeted the NU6 timeline, we have 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're losing 3 months.
Yeah.
There.
So would it seems to be fair to say then that the thing that is governing the timeline of ZSA deployment is deprecating Zcash D. I want to make this explicitly clear because I've heard 2 other reasons that appear not to be true, right? There was the Oli FUD about it being blocked on view key something something, which explicitly we have from the Oli call is not true. And then later there was a question about audits and security testing and such. And it seems like there was a decent chance that stuff will be ready in time and audits can be done. Maybe, maybe not. And of course, if they aren't, then obviously you delay. But so the actual roadblock to governing timing here is deprecating Zcash D because you have to do that X number of months before the release.
I mean, to be more precise, the audits and the replacing functionality of Zcash D will be done in parallel, and whichever of those finishes last is what determines your timeline.
Right, but I just want to be explicit here because this sounds like what is blocking this is resourcing and scheduling on ECC.
No, I don't think that's accurate, Ian. I mean, so
you have please make your case, but I'm going to push back if you say something that is not true, and I am not going to be diplomatic about it. So speak carefully.
I just finished.
Let me bring the popcorn, guys. This is why Zcash is Zcash. Go ahead.
So there's a lot of unknowns, right? So what we're saying is, like, it's going to go. The circuits need to be reviewed, right? That still needs to happen. So there's circuit review, there's the audits, there's whatever remediation comes from it, and we're saying that needs to be done by the end of June. In order to get
so if we want the next network upgrade to activate by November, which would be necessary in order to have a sort of no gap in the dev fund, then both the audits and the Zcash D replacement functionality would need to be done by the end of June.
Yeah, all we're saying, like, again, is like we decoupled these things. So ZSAs have their own timeline. If that timeline can be shortened, awesome. They have their own timeline. But
yes,
but we don't, like, the way that we see it today is like that's not feasible for a November activation.
That is true.
There is a blocker on Zcash D deprecation, yes. That it takes time, yes, independent of how many people that you have on staff working on that single thing. We have an approach that we'd like to talk to the foundation about how that might work and who would do what and what code we can use. So it is a consideration, but it's not the only consideration. We don't know if it's going to take longer to get through audits and to get bug fixes, to get adequate testing, and to have adequate wallet support for ZSAs by the time we need to in order to have a November activation. So we said, okay, well, let's decouple it from November. Let's not give it a specific date, to Dodger's point earlier about like what needs to be done, and say, okay, it feels more realistic that that's kind of a Q1 thing versus a Q4 thing, which is a couple months, and it gives us more time. And so it's that decoupling.
On the current roadmap, I think it has NU7 activation projected for April. So we can argue about how many months it is. So December, January, February, March, April.
But that's just a guess, right? That's just a guess.
It's just a guess
based on what we think, audits take. And that April date that's on there is not dependent. Like we will have deprecated Zcash D well before then. That's
so if we are able to deprecate Zcash D and do the audits sort of earlier than we've projected, then the NU7 up to a point, the NU7 activation can be earlier.
There's
Let me ask a question. Are we here to discuss how to get ZSAs deployed? Or are we here to listen to ECC tell us what's going to happen?
Dodger.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Well,
Because
Yeah,
this
actually, that might be a little bit-
timeline,
Oh,
this timeline that you're sharing now wasn't shared with anybody before. I
We
think
said
it was
Dodger.
posted last night.
Dodger.
Can I actually interrupt before this goes off the rails? Just as a comment. It actually may be that this is a reasonable set of a timeline of like, you can't get this done by November. I don't want to try to do math off the top of my head on deadlines on a call, and that it has to go in slightly later, right? The technical concerns that Dara and Strat have raised are potentially, no, they're valid. Timelines I don't quite have, right? But that absolutely is the sequencing that has to happen. And it's the governing bit is deprecating Zcash. And the reason I'm making a point of sticking on this is not necessarily to argue that it needs to be NU6, but if that's the resource limitation, that resourcing needs to be done such that 3 months later it can go in, right? And we need to, out of this call, I think, get a picture of what the dependencies are. Because when we started this call, there's been a bunch of confusion about audits, which Jonathan's pretty clear he thinks will be done and ready by midsummer. And by the way, that aligns with my intuition of what it takes to audit something of that complexity. Josh, you're absolutely right. You never know if audits will have problems and mitigations, but that is a reasonable timeline in my experience, right? Then the next thing is Zcash dedeprecation and getting the actual ZSA code done, which again, Josh thinks we're going to have done. So those are the sequence of things. And once we get ground truth on that, we can talk and figure out what the deadlines are afterwards. And I don't think we're going to make that decision on this call. And so we don't need to start arguing with each other about it yet.
Agreed.
My point is that it's always been clear that the Zcash deprecation was going to be the critical path. That was the thing that was likely to take the longest, that was likely to involve the most effort in terms of getting the Zcash ecosystem moved across. And it's always been the thing that I'm of the view should be the highest priority. And that's why back at ZCon last year, we agreed with ECC that we would step up and work with ECC to make that happen as quickly as possible. What really concerns me now is that conversation happened last year, and then ECC said that they wanted to get Zashi out as a priority. But now we're talking about April next year before Zcash D is deprecated.
Okay,
no.
So we're talking like a year and a half
First of all,
between an agreement to get Zcash deprecated and then it actually being deprecated.
That is not so. I understand that it says Zcash D deprecated on simultaneously with NU7 activation on our roadmap diagram, but that just means that Zcash D nodes will by definition fall off the network if they have not implemented ZSAs, because they're not consensus compatible. So that is in practice, if the EOS halt for those versions of Zcash D will be before then, so they'll stop working before then, and they can stop working at any time before then, as long as the as third parties have an alternative to move to.
Let me ask a different question. Are we going to start making progress on deprecating Zcash D?
Of course,
we already
that's
have
on the roadmap.
Could you just remind me, what is the actual current roadmap for when that'll be done? I don't mean this is an adversarial question. I literally don't know.
Just click on that tab. Yeah.
And once again, just to remind, this is something that wasn't discussed with the foundation or as far as we were anybody else.
And we said in there, we said this is based upon a set of assumptions and what we think is doable, but that we need to have this conversation with the community, and that this is going to change. This is elastic based on these sets of conversations. This is not.
Also, anyone is free to propose their own roadmap. The point of having something that shows the kinds of timelines that are available is to make it clear what the, like, I noted that it looks kind of waterfall in places. It's essentially just a Gantt chart. It's just going, if you roughly estimate like what's the minimum you can do for each of these, this is how it all stacks out. Yeah,
Sorry, where am I
I
looking on
personally
this to get the
prefer the
actual
path to
number?
ZSAs diagram
Scroll,
because I
scroll
like DAX,
down.
but
Yeah,
Scroll down. Also,
Yeah.
so something, you know, not to harp on wallets, but the task of providing a replacement wallet for Exchange users and the task of providing ZSA support in wallets, those two are related but orthogonal, right? And both of those have to happen in order for Zcash to be deprecated and in order for ZSAs to activate.
Right. So let's focus on just the Exchange wallet for a second, just to simplify the analysis.
yeah,
So
can
where
we go
are
back
we
to
looking?
the path to ZSAs tab? Because that's really the one that's relevant here.
This one or that one?
This one. I mean, the high level is fine as well, but the
I just want a date. I don't even care what the date, like, just like, when is it? What are you guys estimating?
I think the date depends on how high the work gets prioritized.
Right, but I want to know what their
Yes.
current plan is.
I mean, with maximal priority, it's going to be a few months to get a service wallet, and that's an optimistic timeline to have a wallet service that satisfies Exchange users and that has been adequately audited for use by exchanges where they're dealing with large amounts of money.
Agreed.
That
Yep.
again,
and if we're doing that,
rough at best, that seems like a
then
reasonable, like it would take a couple of months.
but you have to
But
also
no,
then
it's-
remember if we're solely focused on that, then we're not focused on the network upgrade parts. We're not focused on
we can't
helping
do
to
both.
integrate and audit the new code, get that into the Rust code, get all that through. All of that has to happen in parallel. Even if you ignore everything else and just say that the goal is to get ZSAs in, we already have two parallel tracks we have to deal with. Minimum.
As I said earlier, it may well be that once we get down to the actual basic facts and not misinformation, that like the timeline is roughly what you guys have. I am not quibbling with the timeline. I'm trying to find out what the actual blocker is, because I've seen various things asserted that aren't necessarily in the dependency path versus this is.
Okay, so we're past those things now, right? So now we're saying it's the right thing probably to decouple the things that we're doing for NU6 from ZSAs, that ZSAs have their own path, that we've made it a priority to deprecate.
Actually, we're not quite.
One small thing there.
Yeah.
Let's say that we actually make it to be ready around NU6, but you know, Zebra is not ready and the client, the wallet's not ready, but we are kind of ready with testnets and audits, etc. And we provide a pull request for you guys to merge. You won't put it in the code probably because you'll be busy with those two parallel tracks that are that have nothing to do with ZSA, and then we'll be left with another set of tasks of chasing after changes in Zcash as an ecosystem, which we've already done once when there was the switch.
You said something
there is
there
a
that I
path.
think is
There is a path to
self-contradictory.
not doing that.
Darama, give me a moment here.
Yes.
How do you plan to have activation on testnet if you don't have integration with ZebraD and a wallet?
No, this is if
I'm
you have
saying
integration with ZebraD, but not with the wallet.
we run to prepare an integration for ZebraD and the wallet. We don't do the integration you guys do, or like the community does. And now ZSA is part of that wallet, and we can test. If you decide not to do it, which is a possibility, okay, then we have provided yet some more code that sits on the shelf. And
it doesn't need to sit on the shelf. So the point that I was going to make is that so we have the ability to merge code under feature flags so that it doesn't bit rot. And in CI, we can make sure that code compiles.
So can we set that as a non-controversial target, that if we are able to provide code that is mergeable by a certain point, without regards to does it pass the high bars of NU6 delivery, you guys pick it up, take it, hide it under a feature flag. That's I'm very much in favor of not delivering stuff that's not fully baked. not like deploying and running it. And then we can look at the rest of the roadmap of ZSA further down the line. And then the rest of the conversation, which I'm following, like really, I'm following what you guys are saying. It's yeah, there's constraints. You need to have a certain amount of time to convince an exchange to not lose all their their tokens.
Yeah. So for Zebra, it's sort of ZSF. It's ZF's sort of responsibility to merge that code if they want to. But for Libra Zcash, we're happy to merge any code under feature flags. I think the question is, if we have to make the decision of whether to do NU6 as it is proposed in our roadmap, or to concentrate on implementing so the parts of the wallet support that go into Libra Zcash.
Well, no, there's a third
because we can't do
option here,
both.
which is why I told Josh we weren't quite done, right? So if fully prioritizing deprecating Zcash doesn't get done until midsummer, right? Okay, you can slip that a little bit to do some other stuff. But if this is the thing that's blocking in ZSAs, and ZSAs is the only user-facing feature Zcash has shipped since it launched, that changes anything, then it might be a very good idea to get commitments.
Sampling changed a lot.
To actually, get that done. Because the thing that I'm really worried about here, right, is, okay, yeah, we need to do Zcash, we need to deprecate all the stuff, and then this slips for other resource reasons, right? It's fine if the thing is we working all out, can't get to this until now because of absolute reasons and limitations and everything else. But it would be really, really bad if it slipped because it wasn't prioritized enough. And this is my worry when we talk about moving deadlines, is we'll move the deadline and then you won't. And I want to be explicitly clear because I trust you two, but you're not the people doing resource prioritization necessarily, right?
Just a second. I'm ECC's R&D manager now, so I am doing prioritization. This was not the case before I was promoted to R&D engineering manager. Now I am.
Okay, in that case, well, then there are some questions.
No, then you move to plan B. You need to get there a drunk, and
but in either case,
very hard.
Like one major thing that we do need for this to change is this is absolutely the a major priority. I don't want to assign the top one to it because I don't quite know what you guys have. But this is the thing that's blocking, right? In all of these discussions, Josh is we have the code, it'll be done. We have audits lined up. Yes, there may be problems that come up and then it will delay because, again, we don't ship unsafe stuff. That's the culture Zcash has. But the thing that actually is blocking this, that it's not going into NU6, is what I believe is technically a reasonable point, which is, yeah, we have to deprecate Zcash, great. And yeah, looking back, you have to move that back a couple of months to be able to give exchanges a thing they're going to use. And that has an interdependency with testnet. And yeah, okay, the math probably, maybe, doesn't work out to get it done in November. Again, I'm not checking the math live on a call. But then we absolutely, if that's the blocking dependency, and that seems to be the conclusion here, have to say, okay, that dependency is going to be the fuck gone by November, July, August, something, you pick a date. But even if ZSAs are going to move to January or April or whatever it is. Does that seem, do you guys get where I'm coming from? Does that seem reasonable?
Okay, so I'm not going to commit to a date, but I will say that
nobody
yes,
commits to anything live on air.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you a month on air.
Everything that we've been doing on wallet development is directly related to making a replacement for the Zcash wallet. None of the effort that has gone into the back end of Zashi, which is the dominant place where effort has been expended, is all of that is intended to be used for a wallet replacement. So it's not so I've heard Zashi mentioned before. I would say that working on Zashi has accelerated this process as opposed to held it back at all. because it has meant that we've been entirely focused on a wallet backend.
Yeah.
That's a good
and
point. I guess it's an offline question. I'd be curious why there's extra work to be done, but you can just message me on that.
By the way, it's also worth mentioning that so the core team in ECC is focused on Liver Zcash primarily. There's also a wallet team which is sort of different people who work with us closely, but the front end of Zashi is not taking a huge amount of our engineering time as core team. Is Andrea on the call? I don't think so.
I don't think that any of the
Okay, then I have
Andrew, go on.
I have an explicit question, and I want to be very clear. I actually do not mean this adversarially, but it sounds like from Dodger's comment, there's been a bit of a breakdown on trust here, right? Because you all, I believe, said we were all migrating to Zebra on stage at ZCon. I wasn't there, but this is what I've been told. And then Dodger's like, WTF, it looks like it's going to take a year and a half. And so I guess the question probably in his head, and I'm going to put words in his mouth specifically because he probably wouldn't say this and would be nicer about it, and maybe isn't even thinking it, is, well, wait a second, then how did this take that long? Especially if the Zashi work, and this sounds like a very good point, Chris, was actually sort of sympathetic with that. Why are we talking about this being delayed that long? What happened? Because I think if you explain that, it might go a bit of ways to like.
I think so. So I think part of the issue here may be that we could have shortened that box on the diagram, but it only needed to happen before NU7 activation. But I take your point. We should shorten the box so that we were making a commitment to have deprecated Zcashd as soon as possible, and that will relax the requirements on when NU7 can happen.
Well, I don't,
to some extent.
I don't think that we actually know enough about the process of deploying new wallets at the exchanges to put a length on that box that is at all accurate.
That's why it's a conservative estimate.
But we actually don't know. We don't know how big of a hurdle it is going to be to get a new wallet deployed at exchanges. And that uncertainty makes me very uncomfortable with saying, okay, yes, this can be done by July. I can foresee a path where implementation of a minimal set of functionality is complete at that time. I can't see a path where exchanges have agreed to upgrade, and exchanges and miners have agreed to upgrade on that timeline.
And I agree with your worries. And to be clear, if that comes up, I can't speak for the rest of the community, but if that's what comes up and you guys can make a pretty easily credible case that those are the issues, I will definitely be supportive of delaying that. I think the worry is that because you're worried about that, you don't prioritize the stuff that you know you can.
I mean, I'm working as hard as I can on a day-to-day basis. I have been for 4 years now. I can't go any faster.
If I can just step in to respond to Ian's question about what has been happening since then. If you look at, just as an example, I think I've got the right tag here. That's the tag for the 0.9 release, which were of Zcash Client Backend, which was released just before the beginning of middle of the year, so sort of before that ZCon time. And then the next one after that was September. Basically, 5, 6, 7 pages of scroll on my 4K monitor is what we have been doing. And all of that is wallet related. Now, the reason that and that's only one of the crates. The Zcash client is the other one that has all this stuff in there. The thing to remember about the path that we've been trying to get to, which is the nice Rust wallet that can replace things, is we need to have feature parity with what Zcashd is with what it's currently doing. Zcashd, the Zcashd wallet has 3 main pieces of functionality. It has the transparent logic, which we inherited from Bitcoin Core, and that's what the exchanges actually primarily depend on. It has the sapling code for supporting sapling transactions, and it has the orchard code for supporting orchard transactions. Sprout as well, but we'll put that aside because Tilda, no one's using that now.
Yeah, there's barely any wallet support for Sprout in the Rust code.
Okay. The Rust code only supported the second case. Only one of those three prongs was implemented in the Rust code. What we have basically spent the last 6 to 9 months doing was, well, prior to that was dealing with sandblasting. But a lot of the changes we were making in the Rust code were to be a sandblasting resilient sapling and orchard wallets. And then most of this last bit, and particularly in the lead up to Zashi, has been doing all the things to make 2 of these 3 prongs work. To bring orchard into the mobile SDKs, which is also necessary to have orchard support in a Rust wallet. So that's been the focus of those essentially, since ZCon last year, the focus has been to have a sandblasting resilient wallet that supports sapling and that supports orchard in addition to sapling. And that's roughly where we are now with the release of Zashi 1.0, is we have those 2 prongs. The main remaining prong after that is transparent. And transparent, we have only ever had minimal support in the Rust code because we don't really want to support transparent. But in particular, we focused on shielded storage only. So transparent support is limited to, we can receive some things, but then you're forced to shield them in order to do any spends, which greatly simplifies the wallet part of it, but is insufficient for a proper Zcash wallet replacement. That's the main remaining prong from a wallet perspective. There is having the script engine built in, having transparent storage and spends management, having the way to get that data from the full node in through where we need to, having the kinds of outputs functionality, because Zcash supports not just your P2PKH, it also supports a number of different ways to do P2SH. Primarily, I think mostly what people use it for is like K of N, Bitcoin style multisig, but technically it has support for other kinds of multisig and things that you can do. Basically, as long as your script has like signature fields in it, it will go and solve it for you. So there's a bunch of extra functionality there, which is what remains.
Thanks for the clarity. Thanks for the clarity about this. This is super interesting and concrete and demonstrates a ton of work. Really, thank you. I have a few questions on what you just sent. First is, how close is that to being useful by a Zebra node? And the other one is, how far are we from that transparency being actually implemented?
So for the useful in a Zebra context, the main pieces of that are there's a bit more work that we need to do in terms of pulling apart the traits, I think, Chris, but not too much more work, I believe, on that side. And then it's really just, the traits are there to, we have the SQLite side, which is obviously what we use for Zashi and for the mobile SDKs, so also Edge and Unstoppable and whatever, use that backend. But for a Zebra case, implementing a backend to that is better suited for desktop full node wallet is the main next piece to evolve there, which then can turn into something that is suitable for use in the full node side.
Yeah,
on the so go, Chris, and then I'll go to transparent.
Yeah. So whether or not we need actually a separate backend is kind of, it's an engineering discussion to be had. If there's a possibility that we could reuse the SQLite backend, then there might be, that would save us some work. I think that as you stated, the transparent functionality is the piece where there's a lot of work to be done because we have not had time to do that work. And the way that transparent functionality was originally introduced to the wallet was, it was essentially hacked in as a spike. and there is tech debt related to that. So, and this may go as far as reworking some of how we interpret the interface with Light Wallet D to work, because right now all of everything that we've written there is working as a light client. So there's a layer of connection to a full node that needs to be sorted out, and then there's like I said, there's a bunch of stuff that is just kind of hacked in for the limited transparent support that I think it's fair to say it will essentially all need to be replaced and migrated away from to support the full transparent functionality that that is required for a Zcash D replacement.
I'm not entirely sure about that, but that's an engineering issue that we'll have to deal with.
I have a very dumb question. Can ZSAs be done as a soft fork of Orchard? You'd be able to keep the old clients around. They wouldn't be able to send ZSA transactions, but then you would have bought yourself time to in parallel deploy the wallet stuff. Obviously, exchanges not supporting ZSAs would be a limitation, but that seems like a way to make progress. It may be an idiotic.
Okay, so first of all, we don't do soft forks, especially not soft forks.
But yes, I agree.
Especially not soft forks for this kind of functionality. And I'm going to have to go back in my head to.
Yeah, from a technical perspective, the answer is also currently no, because there is nowhere we could soft fork it into the transaction format. If we did, for example, if we did do a network upgrade prior to the ZSA network upgrade that did things like made the changes for how memo fields are done to enable authenticated reply addresses and whatnot, at that time we could also include the changes in the transaction format to allow that soft forking to occur. But it would need to be, we would need to make an explicit choice in a prior hard fork to allow that soft forking function space to occur in the transaction format.
I don't see that would actually, I don't see that would actually.
It's a dumb question. We don't need to go on very much. We can move on to more important things. Thank you.
It's aside from whether it's safe or not, I don't think it would move the timeline much.
Yeah, the other thing there is that in our proposal in our timeline for NU6, we included already the transaction format changes required to support ZSAs in the NU6 timeline. So that's effectively, in some sense, already what you're talking about. But with respect,
we haven't fully decided to do that yet.
We haven't
but
decided.
That's a possibility.
That's one of the things that we've proposed. The other piece there is, again, we made a mistake in NU5 by working first on getting Orchard functionality into a testnet without having enough wallet support to really test it. That's the thing that we need to not do this time. And where that wallet support, well, it doesn't make sense to develop that wallet support inside of Zcash D. If I don't know that it makes sense to develop that wallet support outside of Libra Zcash. The thing that makes most sense to me there is, okay, let's start getting that wallet support that's needed for testnet activation of ZSAs into Zcash client backend under feature flags and so forth.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I know
we already have a beginning of test framework so that we can test our own transactions in ZSA, and we're working in that direction. I'm again, anything that goes towards accepting the word, including it, treating it as a first-class citizen, but then feature flagging it however you deem necessary. I'm strongly in favor.
Yeah. So
note that
offline.
Yeah. Note that on our roadmap we have an entry for NU7 support in Libra Zcash in July and August. If it's possible to move that forward to June, and we will. But
and the other aspect there is again, the roadmap is really just guidelines at that point. Most of that stuff should be happening as as an ongoing basis anyway, because it's not just one single PR that Kedit can push up and like propose the code for. It's like 5 different code bases, and within those we really need those to be in a bunch of separate smaller PRs to be even just reviewable at that point, like we've been talking about in the couple more recent ZSA specific discussion things. So really the process for getting ZSAs in is already ongoing, and the code landing is going to be happening in the next across the next month as a series of smaller PRs that we can get in to incrementally add more and more ZSA support, even in parallel with if we end up doing an NU6. That's still going to be happening in parallel.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned that we might be overloading ourselves. So there is not a commitment to do all of that in parallel, because one thing that as engineering manager I am very conscious of is that we're not a games development company. We don't do crunch, and so we have done crunch at some. Yeah, okay. We there has been one crunch for Zashi during my time as engineering manager, and I am determined not to do that again.
That was the 4th or 5th back-to-back crunch, though. So
well, yeah.
So
we're not doing it again.
Again, we're kind of out of time today. We haven't gotten through either, kind of any kind of resolution on NU6, other than we have a timeline that we believe is reasonable, that again can be shrunk if we're able to move faster, or if Kedit moves faster and they get their stuff. There's a lot of ifs, but it's not something we can change today.
Wait, the current thing that we've all been talking about is not a lot of ifs on Kedit. It's a lot of ifs on when Zcash gets deprecated.
No.
Yes.
It is. The Kedit is not done. The audits are not done. There's ifs. We think they'll be done.
All it isn't done.
We think they'll be done.
Yes, but those are like, the estimate is they will be. Yes, there are unknowns. They could get delayed.
I mean, the same. Yeah, but the same is true of the Zcash deprecation.
Yes, but the current, if you plot this out in the Gantt chart, right, the current thing that we think won't make it by that deadline is on.
What's your point? What's your point?
Deprecating Zcash. And the reason I'm making a point about this, Josh, is you're the CEO of ECC, and so to say, oh, it's blocking on other things makes me skeptical.
I'm not. Gosh, you're not hearing me, or I'm not articulating well. One of the two, right? We're saying there's a number of dependencies, of which kind of getting through audits and all that stuff is one, of which Zcash deprecation is one. We're working on those things. There's external dependencies on adoption, all that kind of stuff. We have a reasonable timeline pushed out there. Is it conservative? I don't know. I think it's reasonable. And that's what we're pushing for. So if there's things that can or are accelerated, awesome. We'll move faster, or we'll get it activated faster. But it's a bunch of ifs right now.
Josh, if we accelerated ZSAs and delivery tomorrow morning, nothing would change in the timelines, right?
Yeah, the critical path is Zcash deprecation.
Yeah.
We have
problems you have control over.
Zcash, and it is going to take. So okay, so I'm. Even if that were 100% true, what it is not 100% true, but even if it were 100% true, we have a reasonable path for Zcash deprecation.
Yeah.
I actually think that second statement is probably true. The question is prioritization, if it can be accelerated.
We said this is where we have been focused. I think we made that clear. And we said this is where we're going to continue to be focused. We have to deal with the legacy code base. We do, right? We have to deal with that C++ garbage. It's a bunch of tech debt, stuff we don't want to have to deal with. We're highly incentivized to move off of it. Like the kind of, what I feel like is kind of this finger waving, antagonistic kind of approach versus a collaborative thing that we're trying to do with you in the community.
Josh,
wait.
Josh, we want to, hang on a second. We want to see you guys move off the C++ code base as well. And that's why I agreed with Zuko and with Alan Fairless last August, that we would step up to help you guys, because we want to see Dara and Strat and Chris all be unleashed to build great things for Zcash.
I apologize. Can I be excused? I need to put my daughters to sleep.
Yep.
It's a bit late. Thank you everybody. I really learned a lot, and I'm a little bit more calm after this conversation actually, because I'm seeing that the what I had in mind in like who's gonna pick up wallets and what's the pace. I actually see like concrete movement and progress, and I'm actually more optimistic after this call. Thanks everybody. I
Thanks,
really
John.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I mean, this timeline is not something that ECC management has pulled out of the hat. This has been very thoroughly discussed between sort of me, Strad, Chris, Josh, and so on. So it is our realistic estimate of how long things will take.
And we're not going to rush it. We can't rush it. I mean, it's too big a deal.
No, I don't think anybody's suggesting that we rush it. I think the question is around priorities.
We've given you our part. We've told you what our priorities are. Done.
Yeah.
So deprecating Zcash D is the top priority?
Yes, and has been since Zcon last year.
Yeah, the vast majority of what we've been doing has helped with that. I mean,
as I said in chat, you were actually offline temporarily while I was answering that part. So
yeah, you should go watch that section of the video.
Yeah.
Actually, that question was asked for your benefit.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something. I've had conversations in the past where the priority was delivering Zashi, and
go watch the part of the video.
And
the front end of Zashi, the front end.
When I say I've had conversations, it was a conversation with you, Josh, where I said, "Look, let's prioritize deprecating Zcash D," and you said, "No, we need to get Zashi out."
You're mischaracterizing the conversation. You said what you told me on that call, which you said, if I were you, I would take all of your engineering resources and focus on that one thing and nothing else, right? And what I said, that's not what we're doing. I said, that's not what we're doing. We have a front-end team that is delivering the Zashi front-end wallet. All of the back-end wallet stuff, which is, I guess, the part of the conversation that you missed, all feeds into our ability to deprecate Zcash D. These are not kind of one-off. This is like that kind of notion is a very simplistic understanding of how we work and what we do. And will continue to be a priority.
Can we please put a cap on this, because I don't think this conversation thread is running anywhere right now. I think at this point we are now heading over time, so we really should wrap this up.
We don't have time to discuss, which I really wanted to discuss, what is that actually going into NU6.
Yeah.
So I think we will have to have another meeting about that.
Yeah.
We have another meeting tonight.
Okay.
So we can carry on this discussion then.
Yeah. In the meantime, if there's anyone who wants more information about concretely other things as we've covered here in terms of what is blocking and what exists and what remains on the Zcash D deprecation front, let's carry that on in the R&D Discord, in the Zcash D channel there.
Yeah, because frankly we were so busy sort of arguing about whether ECC was sufficiently prioritizing Zcash D deprecation that we didn't have a lot of time to actually talk about Zcash D deprecation, which is unfortunate.
Okay, but now that we've understood,
we can
the limiting
talk
thing,
about that
we can
tonight.
prioritize that later.
More.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
I just want to highlight that from my perspective, from Zcash Foundation's perspective, we received the message from the community quite some time ago now that getting ZSAs added to the protocol was the top priority. Back then, it was characterized as a short-term priority. It's turned into a longer-term priority. But from my perspective, we'll do whatever is reasonable to make that happen, and that includes work, like I said, as agreed last August, working with ECC, leaning in with our resources to help get Zcash D deprecated, because I think we all agree that that's the best path forward. But I just want to be clear that that's our top priority.
All right.
Let's wrap it up there. We do have another Arborist call tonight, so we can pick up the conversation then, and continue communicating furiously and getting hopefully on the same page, and coming up with a clear plan to get this functionality deployed.
Thank you for moderating.
Thank you all. Thank you all for attending.
Yep. Bye, everybody.
See you.
Thank you to everyone. Bye.